Hi, Odyssey Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama war movie named Persian Lessons. The story starts with a bunch of Jewish people waiting in line to be killed. Among them, a smart man fell to the ground before the guns went off. He acted like he was dead, trying to trick the Nazis, but they saw through his plan and caught him. Right after, he started crying and pleading for mercy. He said he was Persian, named Gilles, not a Jew. He showed them a Persian book to prove it. Luckily, the leader of the German soldiers was also learning Persian. Even though the soldiers weren't fully convinced by the man's story, they decided to take him along because they wanted to please their bosses. So, the man was brought to the prisoner of war camp and met Lieutenant Klaus. In truth, he wasn't Persian at all, he was a real Jewish person. He got the Persian book by taking it from another Jew in exchange for his only piece of bread. He didn't actually know Persian, he could only read the owner's name on the cover. Also, he only knew two more words, which were basically father and mother. Klaus looked at the man carefully and said he didn't look like a Persian at all. Then, the soldier showed Klaus the book with Persian writing. He inspected it closely and saw a signature inside. He asked if the man's name was Gilles. The man was a bit confused but agreed. Klaus then asked how to say mother in Persian. After a short pause, Gilles answered. Klaus flipped to the next page, pointed to a word, and asked Gilles what it meant. Luckily, it was one of the Persian words Gilles knew from the book, so he said it meant father. But Klaus still wasn't sure about Gilles' identity. He gave Gilles the book and told him to read a passage from it. Gilles cleverly said he never went to school, so he didn't know how to read. He could only speak Persian. He then made up a conversation in Persian with Klaus. Klaus couldn't understand, but he felt happy, thinking he had found a real Persian. Thanks to this clever trick, Gilles escaped death once again. He was assigned to work in the kitchen and had to teach Persian to Klaus after finishing his tasks. Gilles worked with great fear because he knew his lie could be found out any time. But it was the only way for him to stay alive. Just one small mistake, like saying a word twice by accident, could get him killed. As he worked, he whispered and memorized every word, starting with things he knew well, like plates, dishes, and bread. He made up a Persian word for each object and repeated them in his mind over and over to remember them. When it was time for Gilles to teach Klaus, Klaus asked him to teach 4 basic words each day. Gilles breathed a sigh of relief and started the lesson. He began with the words he had prepared in advance. Luckily, he got through the first night without any problems. But the next morning, Klaus suddenly wanted to learn 40 words per day. Gilles felt overwhelmed. If he struggled with just 4 words, how could he manage 40? Feeling hopeless, he decided to escape from the camp. He ran through the forest, trying to save himself. Along the way, he met an old soldier who warned him about a minefield ahead. If he took just a few more steps, it would trigger an explosion. Gilles took a moment to calm himself down and think carefully about his options. Going forward seemed like certain death, but if he turned back, there was still a chance to survive. He chose to turn back and take a chance with his fate. When Gilles returned to Klaus's room, he expected to translate 40 words, but Klaus surprised him. Instead of translating words, Klaus assigned Gilles a new task, rewriting the information of each prisoner. Gilles quickly grabbed the pen and started the task, realizing it would buy him some extra time. As he wrote, Gilles noticed that by combining the first letter of each prisoner's name with some random letters, he could make new words. He cleverly used these words to invent Persian words. By the time the lieutenant returned, Gilles had translated the 40 new words successfully, narrowly escaping death once again. Every day, when Gilles served food to the prisoners, he asked for their names to create new Persian words from them. For 6 months, since the day he started teaching Lieutenant Klaus Persian, Gilles kept his mind razor sharp, determined to avoid any mistakes. Everything went smoothly until one day when the soldiers organized an outdoor feast. As Gilles was cooking for the soldiers, Klaus approached and asked how to say tree in Persian. While Gilles was slicing bread, he quickly answered Klaus's question. However, Klaus became furious when he realized that Gilles had previously taught him the same word he had invented for bread. Gilles tried to explain that it was a homonym, but Klaus was still enraged. He punched Gilles several times, leaving him with a bruised and swollen face. Then, Klaus had Gilles taken to the stone quarry for labor. Because Gilles was already frail and weakened from the previous beating, he collapsed and fell unconscious. After teaching Klaus improvised Persian for a long time, Gilles started to unconsciously consider it as real Persian, even feeling like it was a part of himself. In a moment of delirium, he even called out to his mother in this improvised Persian, and Klaus overheard it. Since only the two of them understood this language, Klaus genuinely believed Gilles was Persian. This unexpected turn of events allowed Gilles to save his life once again. Klaus made sure Gilles received special care from a doctor and gave him new clothes. He also apologized to Gilles. They continued to use their unique language to communicate, forming a joyful bond. Klaus now held Gilles in higher regard than before and kept him close by his side in the camp. Whenever prisoners were executed, which happened frequently due to the increasing numbers, Gilles was among them. But each time, Klaus would take Gilles to a nearby barn for safety until new prisoners arrived. When Gilles returned, he found his old companions were gone, their bodies now lifeless in the cold. Gilles never forgot their names because their names had become part of the language he had taught Klaus. These names remained etched in his memory as old faces departed and new ones arrived, each with their own names. They all became new words in Gilles' improvised Persian. He never stopped tormenting himself with this burden. Gilles gradually became a crucial figure in Lieutenant Klaus's military camp. Every day, he taught Klaus new words and practiced speaking. Gilles' teaching method had no grammar, and he even devised his own way of constructing complete sentences, despite some peculiar compound words. Klaus now fully trusted Gilles, diligently following his teachings without question. He could even compose poetry in Gilles' improvised Persian. Lieutenant Klaus was delighted with Gilles and often brought him bread and canned goods. However, Gilles always shared his food with one of his friends in the camp. Everything seemed to be going well until one day, a genuine Persian man named Max arrived among the new prisoners. A soldier who harbored a grudge against Gilles, never believed that Gilles was a true Persian. His long-standing resentment now presented an opportunity for him to expose Gilles. He told Gilles that he had found a real Persian. Although Gilles appeared indifferent on the surface, he felt extremely anxious inside. He grabbed Gilles by the neck and dragged him to where the genuine Persian was supposed to be, ready to confront them. However, when they arrived, they discovered that the real Persian had already been killed. Max, infuriated, questioned Gilles if he had anything to do with this. However, Gilles genuinely had no knowledge of what had transpired. Another prisoner stepped forward to claim responsibility for the actions. It was Gilles' inmate friend, the one he had been secretly providing good food to. He knew that Gilles was not a genuine Persian. So, when he learned that the soldiers had found a real Persian, he understood that this could mean death for Gilles. Knowing that death was inevitable for them in the camp, he decided to take matters into his own hands by killing the actual Persian before Gilles could be implicated. After this incident, Gilles felt profoundly exhausted. He was tired of the relentless brutality in this place and had grown weary of the constant fear of being caught and killed at any moment. He became increasingly withdrawn and spoke less. Klaus noticed this and tried to console him, reassuring him that as long as Klaus was alive, he would ensure Gilles' safety. In the ongoing battle with the Allied forces, the Nazis were gradually crumbling, suffering successive defeats on multiple fronts. The High Command decided to retreat entirely, but before doing so, they had two tasks: execute all the prisoners and destroy all classified documents. Gilles knew that today all the prisoners would be killed. His friend's brother couldn't speak, and he had helped Gilles before. To thank Gilles, he swapped clothes with him, hoping it would help Gilles survive. Gilles went with the other prisoners to where they would be killed. Klaus found out and went after the prisoners to get Gilles back. Another soldier tried to stop Klaus, but Klaus threatened him with his gun, so the soldier had to let Klaus take Gilles. Klaus got orders from his bosses to leave, so he packed up his stuff, including the Persian book. He quickly went to the prisoner camp to get Gilles out. Because he was in charge, he got Gilles out smoothly. They went into the woods, and while they walked, Klaus said he wanted to learn Persian because he wanted to go to Tehran in Iran to start a small restaurant and live peacefully. Klaus told Gilles he was free to go wherever he liked. He took off his uniform and went off in a different direction. Gilles felt torn inside and wasn't sure how to react to Klaus. They went their separate ways. After wandering in the forest for many days, Gilles eventually found a refugee camp for Jewish people. When Allied commanders were checking the names of victims, no one could remember how many had died in that prisoner of war camp. Only Gilles quietly remembered everything with tears in his eyes. He said the names of all 2,840 people who had been killed there. Gilles cried and said each name with a heavy heart. Everyone fell silent as each name was spoken. In doing so, Gilles felt like he was letting go of some burden, as if the murdered prisoners had found peace through his telling of their names. Later on, Klaus bought a plane ticket to Tehran, finally achieving his dream. When he arrived at customs, he tried to speak the language he had learned, but no one understood him. That's when he realized he had been tricked all this time. He thought about running away but was caught by the Allied forces right away. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.